So today I'm going to talk about something a little bit different than what I usually cover. Recently, I haven't been able to put down The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina by Roberto Aguirre-Sacasa and Robert Hack. I decided to check this book out because I wanted to have a good idea of what modern Sabrina stories are like before I watched the new TV show of the same name. I expected a pretty good read, but I didn't expect to fall in love with the book near as much as I did. The book starts off by telling us about Sabrina's parental lineage and the circumstances surrounding her birth. Sabrina was born to a warlock father and a human mother, an unorthodox conception that's generally frowned upon by the Dark Lord's unholy coven. When Sabrina's mother tried to run away with her, the witches of the coven scrambled her brains and placed her in a mental asylum, and soon after, Sabrina's father was punished as well and condemned to live life as a tree. And thus, Sabrina grew up with her two aunts, never quite knowing what happened to her parents, only knowing that she wasn't normal like humans and that all other witches seemed to look down upon her with some sort of prejudice. The story is set during the 1960s, around the same time that the first Sabrina books were published. The first arc is aptly named The Crucible. This name is a reference to a play of the same name that's set during and based off of the real-life Salem witch trials. Despite being set in the 1600s, the play itself actually functions as an allegory for McCarthyism in the 1950s, which was when a Republican senator named Joseph McCarthy was able to have many people blacklisted from their careers in politics, careers in Hollywood, and big industry by claiming that they were communists or Russian spies, and relating the accusations to the individual's political views or out-of-context remarks. It's important to note that these accusations were more often than not unsubstantiated and completely untrue. The name rings true in reference to a lot of the happenings in Sabrina's life, including things that happened before she was even born that she could never even help. The Crucible was one of my favorite plays I read in high school, and if you like the Sabrina book, you should definitely give it a look, because it's still important. Even today, we still face these issues on both sides of the political spectrum. This series really plays on that outsider looking in perspective a lot. Sabrina isn't like other humans and can't really relate to them, and constantly finds herself being rejected or looked down upon by members of the Church of the Night. Despite being born of two worlds, Sabrina can't seem to find acceptance or balance in either of them. The series is filled with Satanists, succubi, sins, and so much more. Things are much darker and much more twisted than in the new show. Hilda and Zelda are both a bit more controlling and manipulative, and seem to have had a larger hand in the fate of Sabrina's parents than Sabrina may be aware of. Some of the twists in this story become sickeningly and disgustingly dark, in a real shivers down the spine, grossed out, flowers in the attic kind of way. It all really goes down when a certain character dies, but comes back as someone else. You'll know it when you see it. And if you've read the book, you already know what I'm talking about. The art style is somewhat reminiscent of old school horror comics, with a bit of a gothic aesthetic applied over top. The art tends to get gruesome and horrific in a really good way. Robert Hack does a great job illustrating this book. The monsters and demons tend to look truly horrifying, and the witches look sleek and stylish while also looking demonic and carnivorous in their other form. The settings and locale look so witchingly wonderful as well, and the 1960s era cars and clothes really amplify that feeling of old school horror flicks and old school scary comics meeting a new school kind of terror. One of the more interesting things I found out about the series artwork is that the book's artist, Robert Hack, had actually never even done interior artwork before, only cover art, and he had never colored his own work before either. So for a first-time interior artist and first-time colorist, I think he did an absolutely amazing job. So bravo, Mr. Hack. There may be one big downside to the series, however, and that's that the issues have come out on a very irregular schedule, with the last one being released over a year ago, and the next issue, issue 9, having been delayed twice already. The book was originally supposed to come out October 2017, and then it was pushed back to mid-2018, but here we are at the end of 2018 with no new book. But fortunately enough, we do still have the cover art and the variant artwork for it at least. Maybe it'll come someday, but from my understanding, other Archie horror books like Afterlife with Archie experience very similar issues. When the Archie horror line began in 2013, all Archie comics really had going for it were crossovers and clickbait covers. Now, almost 6 years later, the company has two hugely successful TV shows, and for the first time in decades, Archie Comics characters are popular again and relevant to the youth. Would it surprise you to find out that the same person responsible for writing Afterlife with Archie and The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina is also responsible for Riverdale and the new Sabrina show on Netflix? Roberto Aguirre-Sacasa has a really bizarre, interesting history with Archie comics, ranging everywhere from being given a cease and desist order by the company to being promoted to the company's chief creative officer. Back in 2003, when he was still just a fan, Roberto had created an unofficial musical called Archie's Weird Fantasy, a play about Archie moving to New York and discovering his homosexuality. The Archie comic book company actually ended up stopping the musical by threatening litigation, but after a few days he changed the names of the characters and opened it a few nights later than originally planned. Fast forward a few years, and Sacasa would be working as a writer and co-producer on the hit TV show Glee. While he was working on Glee, he met a writer for Archie Comics and pitched an Archie-Glee crossover, and after the success of that book, he was given the opportunity to create any book he wanted with the Archie brand and cast of characters. So he created Afterlife with Archie, a zombie apocalypse story set in Riverdale, and then he created The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. The success of these two Archie horror books led to him being made the chief creative officer of Archie Comics. That means that Mr. Sacasa oversees everything with the Archie name and cast of characters. From the Riverdale TV show, to Cheryl Blossom 666, to Jughead, to the regular Archie monthly comic. Mr. Sacasa is now responsible for making sure it's all up to par and meets Archie Comics quality standards, which as of recently has been on point. He's even written 8 episodes of Riverdale and 3 episodes of Sabrina so far. As much as I hate seeing how few and far in between these issues come, Roberto Aguirre-Sacasa seems to have a lot on his plate. A lot more than when these books started half a decade ago, and I can't really blame him for how slow these books are coming out when the company overall has been so successful and pushed out so much great content the last few years. As much as I'd like to see the series reach their conclusion or reach a state of steady continuation, I don't really keep my hopes up for it anytime soon, on account of how busy Mr. Sacasa is. If you've read the comic books and have any thoughts or questions I didn't address in this video, then let me know in the comments down below and we'll talk about it. If you haven't read them and still have any questions, then don't be afraid to ask that either. I would definitely recommend this comic book series to anyone, but just remember, it might be a while before the next issue. But anyway, I think I'm going to wrap this up now, so thanks for giving me a few minutes of your valuable time while I rant and rave about comic books. If you want to support the channel, the best thing you can do is like this video and subscribe to the channel. Oh yeah, and maybe ring that bell. Thanks for watching, everyone. Swim Team Captain 7, signing off.